Hey there YouTube, Chris for the Handiguard channel here, and I'm still in Hemet, California at the end of March. Today is March 31st, and I'm going to show you the year later results of a repair that I did on some water damage that I put up a video about, and there was some interest in it, so I thought I'd do a little follow-up to show you what it looks like after 1 year's time. So here's my neighborhood out here in the very nice RV park of Golden Village Palms in Hemet, California. Highly recommend it for its amenities and the atmosphere here. The price was decent. So here's the RV, and before I show you the repair area, which is under here, I got a little towel so I can kneel in the gravel. The damaged area was more or less underneath, and all along the trim edge down on the bottom had come loose, and there was a good bit of the plywood underlayment, the bottom, the floor decking, if you will, of the plywood had started delaminating, and some of it had kind of gotten a little bit of rot in it. So I used a combination of expanding yellow household foam and some caulking material as I put the trim bead back on, but I shot the foam back into the delaminated layers of the plywood, which extended back underneath a ways. You know, so I shot some of that foam wherever it was obviously delaminating, and because there was not a lot of void, because that foam really is not structurally strong, you can't put a screw fastener into it, and it it compresses its foam even though it gets stiff. I was able to repair it because it hadn't gone too far. So I'll show you a little bit closer up on that, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the perils of Pauline. When I first came out west from Florida, by the time I had made the journey from Florida to California, I discovered that all along the front of this entire front area, this thin sheathing, this sheeting had come loose completely, and it was like totally out. The only thing that stopped it from probably catching the wind and whipping right back up over and peeling itself completely off the whole RV was that it was trapped behind the battery case. And I got there and I find, oh my goodness, I got this whole big loose thing. Water from the road would go up in it. I had to repair it. So I spent a day working at getting this tucked back in, caulked in, and then held in place with more screw fasteners on the trim edge. This is a like an angle piece of metal, and that has held up pretty well. Has not come loose in all of the subsequent travel, but at the time I thought it was going to be a real unsolvable challenge, but with a little effort and just diligently staying at it from underneath with everything falling in my face, I was able to get it cleaned out, caulked back into place, and fastened securely. So, nightmare number 2, after I got to a location for last winter, which was also in Hemet, but at a different park, I had to address what was becoming worse, which was this trim piece was coming loose pretty far back, and I tried to repair it just by quickly putting some adhesive in there and just pressing it up and letting it dry. That didn't hold out too long. So I did the method that was shown in the previous video with the expanding foam, and it has held up really well. It's quite solid up in this front corner where it was really mushy before. Although it did puff up just a little bit, it's really not that bad. Another nifty little feature that was installed in this is this slide out drawer that goes all the way across, and you can pull it out from either side, which is really handy to access the items that you store in there, because if you just shoved it in there and couldn't pull it out, the stuff in the very middle would be very hard to get to. Now, I hope you can see this fairly well, as my angle on the viewfinder is limited here. But with the exception of a little bit of overexpansion, it got a little puffy here. It's really not that bad. And the fact that I was able to salvage the sheathing down here on the bottom, this plastic bottom that protects it, I guess, from moisture. I was able to tie that back in, glue it back in. It's not pretty underneath, but I really didn't care there because I'm not going to come under here and look at it very often. And the adhesives, even though I gooped on the caulking here in the final analysis, and again, I apologize if the angle and the lighting is really crappy for you there, but all of that has held up extremely well given the circumstances of Oregon, which is kind of moist. I didn't encounter a lot of rainfall or wet driving conditions, and I've been in Southern California for the remainder of the fall and now into the spring of 2015. So lucky there, and not a lot of water to contend with. However, the overall resiliency of it and solidity, because of the expanding foam, has been all I could ask for. As solid as it needs to be, because it's not really structural here. There's nothing fastening into it or dependent on it. And the fact that I had siding, the sidewall up here, was still relatively solid, intact. It hadn't had any rot in the side panels that go up the side. So I was able to run, as you saw in the previous video, if you watched it from my year ago repair job, I ran some really long 3 and 4 inch screws up through this trim, which already has pre-drilled holes for doing that. But initially in the original build, they're pretty short. So I used some really long ones to pull this up forcefully, and so there'd be a lot of length of those screws up into this up here, which was really solid plywood, nothing wrong with it, fortunately, because that would have posed another problem. If I didn't have anything here to attach to and draw this trim piece up into, I would have had to come up with another scheme for binding it back really thoroughly. But the screw fasteners, I mean, they go all the way up to just below this opening. And that's really what saved my bacon on that one, was being able to pull it up and allow the adhesives to set up in position. The caulk job, I just ran a bead of caulk along here, has been fine. It's not really the prettiest thing in the world, but for an old girl, she's done fine for me. Bought it from a good friend back in Florida before I left some family and people that I cared very much about, but for reasons I'm still fathoming, I decided to head out west, even though I still miss them very much and very dearly. So that's the overview of the RV and the hookups, and my 1 year later follow-up on the RV trim and water damage repair to this front left corner on my Trail Cruiser. Hope you enjoyed it and it was helpful for you if you have a similar problem that you need to resolve. If you're so inclined, click that like button and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you on the next video in my RV adventures. So this is Chris signing off for the Handegard channel.